Hello, wonderful people. Welcome back. All right, we're looking at Chapter 10, Motivating and Satisfying Employees and Teams. Awesome chapter. Now, one of the things I'd like to talk about to start off the chapter with, motivation. How do we motivate those within our organizations, within our teams, to do a better job? Or can we motivate as leaders, as managers? What is motivation? What drives motivation? Well, as for those of you who already read your textbooks, you realize that it's an inner drive. So motivation is something that it's an individual type of what's the word I'm looking for? Something that excites the individual to do a better job. It excites, that drives the individual to want to be a better employee or a better person. So it's an inner drive. So how can you, as a manager and a leader, tap into that? We know motivation has an effect on the outcomes within an organization. How many of you have ever heard of the low morale? There's low morale in the organization. The motivation is really, really poor by the individuals. Well, we're going to discuss throughout this chapter and going into the next chapter some of the ways we as leaders can help with the motivation process, i.e. stimulate the motivation process. Again, remember though, it's an individual process and it's an internal process. Give me a moment as I'm turning pages. So this chapter goes into the study of management. There was a time, probably some of you maybe even believe it till this day, management is simple. You just tell people what to do. Done. Why, Jim, did you spend so much time in school and get a graduate degree in management? I found out there was more to it. And what your chapter talks about is a historical perspective on the studies in management and particularly motivation. Let's just pick out a couple. The first one I want to look at here is the scientific management. Going way back at the beginning when management, at the turn of the 20th century, when management was starting to become a real science. And one of the things that, what was his name? Gosh, was that Mr. Taylor? Yes, Mr. Taylor. And he talked about scientific management. One of the things he found as a motivator was the peace rate system. What is the peace rate system? Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience because my mom, she used to work many, many moons ago, when she used to work for Boulevard Watch. And you remember back in, again, I'm old, you used to have the little crowns on the end of your watch. You used to use that to wind up your watch to keep it going. No batteries required back in the day. So with that, she would actually polish those little crowns. And she got paid a certain amount of money to a certain point. And then if she started to exceed the production levels that were required as a minimum, then she started getting additional pay for each additional crown that she turned out and polished. Well, sometimes she would work herself almost to a physical exhaustion. No, actually she was physically exhausted. I had the opportunity to see her when she came home. But bless her heart. And usually meant I got a little bit better Christmas present or something underneath the tree. But it was an incentive. It was a way to motivate the workers in that company. Sometimes those who consider that a little bit of a harsh type of system to utilize. As the century went on, there was a person, it's called the Hathorne studies. Now what I like to do in the physical classroom, you're just going to have to imagine this for me. What I like to do in the physical classroom during this week is I walk into the classroom right at the time of the classroom. And virtually everybody's in place. And they're usually facing the front of the room, and I usually come in from the back of the room and I turn off the lights. The only thing in the room is the hallway lights coming into the room. You're like, what is Jim up to? Well, here's what I'm up to. You see, when they were doing these studies, the Hathorne studies, they were like, okay, how does the environment affect the workers? So they took half the workers and they said, okay, you're going to be involved in a study. And we're going to see how lighting affects your productivity. And then they took the other half and said, listen, you're not going to be involved. We're just going to see, we're going to watch and see how your productivity stays what we expect it to be at a same rate as it has been. So they looked at the group with the lighting, and they just kept tweaking the light. Now imagine my classroom right now. The only light coming into it is the hallway light, so it was getting pretty dim in that room. And I'm walking around, and my students are giggling. But my point being is that I want them to understand this is what they were experiencing in this facility. And then all of a sudden, no pun intended, a light bulb went on during the study. A light bulb of knowledge. You see something interesting happen. Every time they turned down the lighting, tweaked it down a little bit lower and a little bit lower, the production went up a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, to the point where the group was working in moonlight and their productivity was still increasing. Now here's the real interesting part. Remember the other half of the group that weren't involved? Every time the lighting was effective for the group that was involved, their productivity went up. But they weren't involved. And this might sound silly, but here's what happened. Because we today just take it for granted in business. Most of us recognize that this is an important factor. They were being observed. They were being watched, and they were being recognized, and they were being evaluated, and that alone had an impact on both groups. The lighting had little to no impact. It was the attention. The employees were getting attention. They were starved for attention. And it was proof positive in the studies. Sometimes you go in with a study and you come out with a whole new set of understandings. And that was the understanding. It was, hey, applying attention for management to be involved with their workers and understanding what's driving them, and applauding their successes, etc., etc., etc. It really had a positive impact. So these studies back in the turn of the century really had a huge impact on management today and the management practices we see enforced today. Now, here's what I also tell my students. So remember, out of every 1,000 managers, only a handful have had formal training in management. Sometimes people are moved into higher level positions only because they've done a great job at what they were doing. I don't like to pick on my wife too much, but what the heck, she's not here to defend herself. I'll pick on her a little bit. Wonderful woman. But when she started getting into leadership roles in the beginning, it was tough for her. And with that, she needed to go back and retool, get some training classes, work on her leadership and management skills, because she was a great licensed clinical social worker. But as a supervisor and manager, being a great LCSW doesn't make you a great manager. She needed to get some formal training, and it really helped her. And today she's just excelling. Another thing I want to touch on in this chapter, one of my favorites, is Maslow's hierarchy of need. Now, when I'm in other classes, this is Introduction to Business. I go in other classes, I bring up Maslow again, their eyes start to roll, because they figure they read a whole page on Maslow, they're now an expert. Well, you're not. As we're looking here at Maslow, we're going to get our appetites whet by the information being presented. But let's look at his. If you go to your chapter, you'll see that in the hierarchy of needs, it starts with the physical needs. Food, water, etc. Then it moves to your safety needs, which includes your security. And then really quick, your social, which is belonging, self-esteem, which is respect and being valued, and of course my favorite, self-actualization, being all you can be, right? The Army thing, self-actualizing, that's their saying. What's important with that? How's that important to you as a leader? Well, and as a manager. Let's hope that you're meeting the basic needs of the folks that are working for you with due to the pay that they're receiving and the benefits they are receiving, but also it leads to security. I've had, as a small business counselor, many people who decided not to go out there and venture into a small business because they would be losing the security that comes with working for an established company that provides benefits and things of that nature. But security also includes making sure they have housing, etc. Esteem. This is where you can have a real impact as a manager, building the esteem of your workers, making them feel good about the work that they do. And then, of course, self-actualizing, giving them goals, helping them attain those goals, and then when they reach those goals, to make those moments special, to make those moments something that we all can applaud and take a few minutes to recognize. Self-actualizing. And then you go on and we self-actualize again. I think it was Bill Cosby, the comedian, who once said when I was listening to him, that he self-actualizes on a daily basis because he reaches the goals. He gets out there in front of an audience, and when he delivers a great whatever act, he reaches that point of self-actualization. So your workers don't need to just meet it once a year. My point being, they could reach it maybe on a daily or weekly or however, as often as possible, help them reach those points. Real quick too, I want to touch on theory X and theory Y, McGregor's X and Y theories. Again, your chapter's talking about the early management scientific study days. McGregor was talking about X and Y. X, he decided theory X were employees through his studies, employees who don't like work. And theory Y, work is important and part of their lives. What I want you to be able to do as we move through this chapter and be able to discuss with me is when is or where are the X employees? Who are, do you think, more likely to be your X employee versus your Y employee? Let's talk about the mix within an organization. So I'm challenging you to think of questions that come back to me on X and Y, and let's discuss the McGregor's theories a little bit more in depth as we move along, and of course as we go through our discussion boards. But let's see here. Oh gosh, it goes on to the goal setting. Several different techniques that are used, several different theories that are used, and you can see the progression. The textbook is laying out progression. I remember when MBO came out, Management by Objective, which was an extremely important theory that was it late 70s, early 80s that was brought into place, has a lot of key good points. What I like about it with the Management by Objective is that you're bringing in, you're empowering the associates, you're getting them to buy into okay, we have goals. Now we need to set up objectives to reach these goals, and you're getting them to help you to develop the objectives and then, of course, to reach these objectives. So MBO is an excellent technique to consider also. We're going to talk more about job enrichment and job design as we do our discussions online. They are important. What's the difference? Be able to explain to me the difference between job enrichment and job enlargement. And why would job enlargement motivate you if I gave you more work to do? Someone's going to have to help me with that one. So think about that and get back to me on that question. The textbook went into some of the theories, and today, and particularly in today's market, that really work. The one I'm going to pick out, because there's so many in here, is telecommunicating. Telecommuting. I'll get the word right yet. That's the word I'm looking for. My son James, he works down in Phoenix, Arizona. He gets to come to work about 2 to 3 times a week, and he gets to stay at home 2 or 3 times a week working on his computer. His company then doesn't have to have as much office space available for everybody, because they set the schedules up where people come in on different days. It works out really well, so they can share cubicles when they get to work. But what he likes is being able to stay home and doing 50-70% of the work at home. I've seen it with organizations where they allow job sharing, where 2 people will work 20 hours a week to represent a 40-hour-a-week job, and it really works out well for both people because of their lifestyles and what the priorities are in their lives. And of course, you don't want to lose quality people just because they have other factors that are extremely important in their lives. So how do you get these quality people? How do you hold on to these quality people? Because I'm telling you folks, quality individuals are hard to find, and they're sometimes even harder to keep. So how do being able to look at flex time, job sharing, all of these things that are mentioned in your textbook can help you retain these employees that help your business flourish. And with that, we'll end this chapter. Thank you.